Hi, I'm Corey McKenna, the equipping evangelist and founder of the Cross Current. In this special series of the podcast, I have the distinct privilege of interviewing John Walter, a fellow equipping evangelist with an inspiring glory story and a great accent. It's my personal hope and prayer that the Lord uses this conversation to encourage you and your church about the impact of evangelistic example and gospel faithfulness. Finally, please keep listening to hear how you can enlist in this year's Niagara Falls Extreme Go Teams mission, the very event that the Lord used to bring John and I together. Now, let's join the conversation already in progress. We always say with Extreme Go Teams missions, these missions don't stop there. What happened next?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's more to the story, and even before I moved back to the UK, so the next chapter was, as I alluded to briefly, I was really wrestling with this calling. Is this something I feel equipped to do? Do I even have the gift or ability to do this? I got a strong sense one day I was walking in downtown Toronto, and I saw another open-air preacher, and I won't go into the details, but I feel the Lord directly impressed upon me that I need to preach. So there was another Extreme Go Teams mission later on that same year, 2013. So I went, and I just felt I need to preach this the same way I've seen the other preachers before, extemporaneously. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but I felt I called to do that. And I went down to that second one, and it was the same overwhelming experience, just the whole place flooded with evangelists. But this time I stepped up and preached, and I really felt the Lord empowered me that day. And I kind of felt a confirmation on that day, because I don't know if you remember, Corey, you probably do, but at the end of the day there was kind of awards given out to the best preacher from each church, and it was a little preaching stool.
Yeah, we call that the Open Air Extraordinaire Award, and that's not my idea. I mean, when I went to Living Waters in California, that was something that they had done, and I was the recipient in LA, the very 2006 in LA. I was the guy who they gave the open air, and it was pretty special to me. I mean, my goodness, the fact that I was terrified to do this, and God filled me with this not just this desire, but this courage and passion, and I get up and preach my little heart out for the 2 minutes that I could, and here we are. But yeah, you're saying about yourself.
So I was the recipient of that okay. award, and given that I'd come down there with fear and trembling, and I wasn't really sure, but I tried to be obedient to God, and this was really affirmation. Yes, I believe this is what I'm called to do, and I went away with. The fire was already lit, but the fire was really, really roaring after that. I came away, and I've got to do this. So I actually went to seminary in 2014 in Toronto, and I just had this burden to preach. And I managed to get a small group of other believers together and to go out. And we used to go out on a monthly basis at Huron-Terra and Dundas in Mississauga.
A busy intersection.
Very busy. A great place to do it, to be honest. Still do it there now when I'm back in Canada. So we did that for about a year, and then after that, as I said, I moved back to the UK. But that was really a powerful time of seeing God at work through the preaching. Been back in the UK since 2015, and God connected me with other kind of passionate believers and preachers back there. So I've been blessed to be able to continue this ministry in the UK, preached in various towns and cities around the country. In my church, which you mentioned earlier, we've been going. My family and I have been going there about 4 years, and they weren't doing an outreach ministry. But when my wife and I joined, I had a chat with the pastor, and kind of I made the suggestion. I think this is something we could be doing. So he picked it up and ran with it, and we've been doing it ever since.
Praise God. There's so much wisdom in what you're saying, John, like as far as going right to the pastor. So we really believe that it's important that everything starts with core leadership. That's the biblical pattern. So we don't start at the fringe. A lot of evangelists start at the fringe, and they gather sort of a bit of a coup, and they march their way toward the elder table, and they overthrow the government. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to be biblical. We're trying to be submitted to leadership, and that's just so encouraging and so amazing. And so here you are now. I love the way that this story has sort of emerged. And we've got a mutual friend named Dave. And I get this email from Dave, and to be really honest, equipping evangelism is a bit of a thankless effort. This isn't the part where I'm going to grab Kleenex, and it is what it is. God's gifted me and called me for this, but really it's one of, if not the only, Christian discipline that takes place outside the church, and so a lot of people don't see it happening. And it's not like other ministries where you get a lot of high fives and attaboys and things like that. And so, but this was very encouraging that when I received this message from our mutual friend Dave, precious brother, who's still an equipping evangelist actually, and they have a thriving gospel outreach ministry in his home church. You probably know that. And he said, "Here's this man from the UK," and I remembered you actually from that year. I remember that award. I remember seeing you and meeting you. I remembered your accent and all those things. But when he said, John is actually, he's got the torch and he's running that torch across the UK, man, it was so humbling for me, because you just never know what people do with those Extreme Go Teams missions trips. Some people go home and maybe they quit. I don't know. But God used that. And I say God used that because this is all for God's glory. This isn't you or me. He doesn't need us, right? Everyone. But by God's grace, it was so encouraging to hear that. And then providentially, you come to Canada in this window of time, and we get together here, and you make the trip. But I just want to thank God for you and for your ministry. And I just want our listeners to pray that God gives you great grace and favor. I'm sure the UK is somewhat like Canada, needs Jesus Christ. Absolutely. What can we be praying for in the UK as you preach the gospel, as you equip the saints to do the same? What's the condition over there? What are the major challenges you have with gospel ministry in the United Kingdom?
I think the UK is similar to Canada, but maybe worse in terms of the condition of the church. So the UK needs church revival, and the UK needs preachers, who are men of God who have this burden, have this passion to reach the lost, because the church is on a downward trajectory. It really is, and we're seeing churches close left, right, and centre. So we desperately need revival in the UK. We desperately need evangelists, which is what your ministry is about. So that would be a prayer
for sure.
Obviously for me in my own life and my own ministry, that God would give me the grace to continue with this and not be discouraged. At times it can be discouraging. You don't see much response. A lot of the time you see a lot of indifference. So just the grace to carry on with this ministry.
Well said, John. And you had mentioned revival. I know church revival is a passion of yours, and we know church revival comes through gospel proclamation. Inside the church, first and foremost. You said it so clearly about your background, and you were very gracious when you said so, but I run into a lot of professing Christians in gospel outreach, specifically in universities and colleges where we do a lot of ministry. That 18 to 25 window, I'm sure it's the same in the UK, it's like a black hole. So many are leaving, sort of like you did. I mean, they're searching those deeper issues. They're not getting answers that are truthful and satisfying on the inside of the church. They kind of wander away. So we'll talk to these young people, and so many of them have that story of the fact that they never really heard a clear presentation of the good news. Now, that could be they didn't spiritually hear it. I mean, there's that reality. I think it was Spurgeon who said, we preach to the ear, God drives it to the heart, something like that. But so often they can't even really put together the key touch points of the gospel. God's self, sin, salvation, however you want to frame that up. It's amazing. So we need to preach the gospel in the church on Sundays and small groups and all those events we do. But you're right, we need to go. This whole come and see sort of form of evangelism, not really biblical. We need to go and tell the good news to others, and we will pray for the UK that God's grace rests on your ministry, on your church, and on the whole country. I wonder, as we sort of try to draw to a close, I wonder if you could just in your own words, if you could try to sort of summarize how being equipped by example for evangelism has, I guess, forever affected you personally. I mean, that's a big statement, but how could you summarize why this has been so important in your life and witness?
It's instrumental. It was instrumental. It was the key. It was the factor which drove me to do this, which taught me how to do it. The classroom lessons are good, you know, the way of the master, but there's no substitute for actually getting out there and doing it, and being led by example, seeing an example of how it should be done. It was night and day for me. You know, beforehand I was kind of limping along trying to do it. You know, and the way of the master helped me in the kind of one-on-one conversations for sure. But
I always say though, Ray Comfort doesn't come out of the box though, right? And the videos were amazing, but I needed to go and see it myself. And I preached with Ray Comfort, and such a blessing. What a pivotal season for me. But it's amazing how, in a sense, I feel like God has used me in your life in a similar way to the way he used Ray Comfort in my life. It's amazing how this works. Follow my example. And John, I want to encourage you that now others are following your example as you're following Christ's example, and you will have a multiplied gospel effort in the UK. And that's how this works, is we multiply gospel ministry through equipping the saints for the work of evangelism. Well, John, I just want to thank you so much for coming across the pond, as they say, to testify, and we'll continue praying for sure that God's great grace rests on you, on your family, on your ministry in the marketplace, because that's a ministry as well, your church, and certainly in your proclamation ministry in the UK. But thanks for stopping by. It's been a blessing, man.
Thank you, Corey. Really enjoyed it.
Well, I want to thank you again for tuning into the Equipping Evangelist. This has sort of been a testimonial edition, but the Equipping Evangelist podcast, we say, is an intensely practical audio video podcast whereby I share my experiences and the experiences of others for equipping the entire church for the work of evangelism together. I'm Corey McKenna. God bless. Bye for now. At the Crosscurrent, we believe that a church on mission unifies in the gospel and the gifts for the glory of God. And it's been our experience that gospel outreach, or Go Teams missions, are the easiest way for entire churches to equip their saints by example to normalize sharing the gospel and gifts together. That's why we invite you to take your Go Teams missions to the extreme. Extreme Go Teams missions with the Crosscurrent are local missions day trips into major urban centers for the specific purpose of preaching the gospel together through high-volume tracting, one-to-one witnessing, and even open-air preaching. Extreme Go Teams missions allow Christians and their churches to fully leverage the local missions expertise of the Crosscurrent and get equipped by example by walking with some of the most experienced equipping evangelists in Canada. But these missions don't stop there.
The Extreme Go Teams mission was instrumental for me. It took me from kind of having a burden to actually seeing it demonstrated powerfully how it could and should be done, in my opinion. That experience was 9 years ago for me, and I've never lost the zeal. I'm still sharing the gospel in the UK, and that Extreme Go Teams mission was the springboard.
Not only will Extreme Go Teams missions fan the flames of gospel passion in the hearts of individual Christians, but they'll also serve as a launchpad for entire churches to normalize sharing the gospel in all their personal and community relationships together.
I kind of expected like worst case scenario.
You get a lot of people that are intrigued. They want to know what you're talking about.
We did have a lot of people that were like not receptive to hearing the word, but we also had some very good conversations. And I noticed that not only were we like preaching to other people, but when you say these things, you're also preaching to yourself.
This isn't my comfort zone, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this, but I know I got to let God do it.
It just shows what God can do. when you come to them empty, broken, fearful, and I shouldn't be, but I was. And so God filled it all. It was far beyond what I could even imagine.
Would you continue doing this? Do you feel that this is something that this has been helpful to equip you to continue with your church evangelizing?
For sure. It just gives you that self-confidence, God confidence, and once you see and do it out of the love of God, to see that there's souls that are lost and souls that are hurting, and that, you know, it's pouring out the love of God.
He said to us, go into all the world and share this good news. That means we ought to be able to know how to share it.
So, if you and your entire church need to get equipped by example to normalize sharing the gospel and gifts together, enlist in extreme Go Teams missions with the Cross Current today.